Welcome, welcome, welcome to the first episode of The Lost Traveler with Henry Cameron Allen. That's me. I'm very excited about starting this new project, the Lost Traveler podcast. I have so many friends who are out in the world, who are leaders in life skills development, and people who are also not known at large, who have something to say about this new world, people who have a pioneering spirit, people who have gleaned wisdom throughout their lives and biographies. And this is a place to share it. We're all looking for new questions and hopefully some answers, especially at this time when we're dealing with this global crisis and trying to think about what's on the other side of it. There's one philosophy that says you can't form the picture of the horizon until you reach the top of the mountain. And that's where we are. We are climbing the mountain together right now, all of us equal, all of us on the same footing, precarious as it may feel, more precarious for some of us who are not as healthy as others. And so, it's also precarious for those of us that have family and friends who are not doing too well with this virus. And so I wanted to provide a place to come and seek comfort, to seek wisdom, to share wisdom, and offer comfort as well. So I'm very excited that you're here, that you're listening. And if you have any questions or ideas for subjects that you would like to be brought to the table here at The Lost Traveler, then please contact me, henry@henryallen.org. And I will make a point to get your questions answered. I think you can also send a message attached to this podcast. If you would like to be a sponsor of The Lost Traveler, please contact me as well. Or if you want to be a guest, if I haven't already reached out to you, and I've reached out to a lot of people, go ahead and hit me up either on Facebook or again at henryallen.org, and you can schedule a time with me to become a guest, and we'll talk about that. This will not be a place to promote products or books or anything else, but I will provide sponsorship opportunities for those things. If you have something that you would like me to talk about and share, and with your contact information or website, then certainly let me know. I'm currently in Spain, and data is quite expensive here. So any funds that come in from sponsorships will go to keep this podcast going if there is continued interest, and I hope there will be. A little bit about me. I grew up all over the world. My father was a cultural diplomat for the United States Information Agency, which is now defunct. But their work was to bring American culture overseas at a time in the 60s and 70s before there was even a McDonald's outside the United States. And so it was sort of the first push of American propaganda in the world. And it's, for better or worse, brought us to where we are in terms of a global sort of identity and how we connect to one another. This brings up a lot of questions. It brings up a lot of challenges around culture and how we define culture. It brings up a lot of questions around nutrition and how we are feeding ourselves and our children, and general overall mental and physical health. And so these are all subjects I want to tackle here on The Lost Traveler. When we think about life skills in the past, we have thought about these are qualities, these are skills that every human being on the planet develops. Whether you're living in a small hut in the wilds of Borneo, or if you are living in a penthouse apartment on Park Avenue in New York City, you're learning the same life skills. And the question is, where do we learn those skills and who teaches them to us actively? Typically, parents have been the sole responsible entity for bringing these skills forward to children. And many parents are deficient in the life skills, the very life skills that they are expected to teach their children, and therefore rely on schools to pick up the slack. But teachers are there teaching their subjects. They're not there to teach life skills unless there is, in very rare instances, a life skills curriculum. And so we're hoping with Parenting 2.0 that we get these life skills the conversations going. We're not here to teach life skills directly, but we're here to be a vehicle for conversation and to ignite an interest. And that is in the spirit of what Parenting 2.0 is bringing, in the spirit of what I have always brought, both as a theater artist and director and writer, but also as a life skills teacher and ambassador on a global scale. This is something that I think is important enough to talk about, that I am developing a weekly podcast. And it'll be on Thursdays, every Thursday, and it'll be available forever. Once you become a listener, please talk it up to friends and family if you find it interesting. I will have a guest next Thursday, and that will be announced very soon. If you go to the website that's attached to this podcast, then you'll find the information there about the following week's guest. So please keep in touch with me and ask me about whatever you want to know. And if I don't have an answer personally, I will find someone who does, and I'll bring them on, and we will address your questions. I want this to be listener informed. I want the questions and the subjects that we tackle to come from you. If there is a question that you have about how to handle life now, which is turning in a very different direction than we ever expected, any of us, how do we prepare our children to meet this world? I know a lot of students that are graduating from school right now don't even get to complete their graduation, or some students are going to have to repeat part of their year once the cloud has lifted of this COVID-19 disaster. But we don't know when that's going to happen. And so we want to know for ourselves, we want to know for our children, we want to know for our families and our friends, our parents who are aging. We want to know how to protect and how to prepare for a world that we can't even imagine yet, because we haven't reached the top of that mountain. But let's climb it together. And without further ado, stay tuned for our first guest coming up right after this. This is our first interview. This is Simcha Shepsel Ben David, otherwise known as Saul Stewart Gefter, my father. Welcome to the first episode of The Lost Traveler.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm
So-
speaking from Delray Beach, Florida.
And it's amazing what technology has brought us to, that we can actually do this between Delray Beach, Florida, and Arroyo Molinos de Montanches in Spain. Well, it's great to have you as my first guest, Dad, because I have been thinking about thematically what this time signifies in the greater scheme of things. And I was thinking about this today being Passover. And of course, we reflect the exodus out of Egypt of the Jewish people, and plagues factor greatly in that story, don't they?
Yes, that's correct. Passover is known as the time of liberation, the celebration of freedom. And that is why throughout modern history, you find that even though the Jewish people represent a minuscule part of the human race. Most of the great social movements dedicated to the improvement of man and woman's condition on earth and in the universe has people of the Jewish faith as members, founders, or movers and shakers. So I think the holiday goes beyond remembering a historical event that happened 3,500 years ago. It has significance even today, whenever you find any human being in bondage, whether it's intellectually or physically, that we have a duty to liberate them.
Absolutely. Do you feel that, given the state of the world and COVID-19, coronavirus, that it has a particular meaning for you that's different? Why is this year different from all other years, in other words?
Well, I say that plagues or epidemics have occurred every 100 years. I don't know how far back that goes, but it certainly goes back prior to the beginning of the 20th century.
Hmm.
And I think it's very interesting because it shows where excess can lead. I think failure to pay attention to the norms of good health, good eating, uh, education led to uh, this virus occurring and being spread throughout humanity.
I would agree with that. In my introduction to this first episode, I mentioned that I had grown up in different countries in the world because of your work, and talk a little bit about the just to reflect a little bit on what it meant to you at the time that we first went overseas, when you were working with the USIA. Um, the impact that work had on the world as we see it today, and in terms of what you're talking about, because I remember being a little kid, and I remember going to, I think, wasn't it in an airplane hangar, a huge expo of American culture, right? And this was the first push um, during those years of bringing, sort of an awareness to American industry, and that included fast food, that included entertainment and sports and technology and everything else. Um, do you see sort of a ripple effect from that time now that you can reflect on a little bit and talk about? I'm really interested in that.
Well, in what respect?
Well, I remember, when you're talking about nutrition, for instance, let's talk about nutrition. Um, I believe the was it Pepsi that was a sponsor?
Pepsi?
You remember? I think I remember Pepsi being a sponsor, or one of the cola companies. Um,
No, I don't recall. You referring to a cultural exhibition?
yes,
The cultural exhibition that went to Russia
that went to Russia. Yeah,
at that
which was
time.
really, what was that?
At
That
that
was what,
time,
93, 1970,
the Soviet Union. That was in 72,
72.
1973.
Right.
Uh, during the time of the Soviet government of Leonid Brezhnev, who was the
That's
general
right.
secretary of the Communist Party and a great collector of automobiles.
Hmm.
And I
But it wasn't
remember,
just happening in the USSR, right? I mean, this kind of cultural expo was happening all around.
well, USIA's mission, which began on August 1st, 1953,
Mhm.
being signed by an executive order, I believe, by President Eisenhower at the time. Um, their mission was to spread uh, tell America's story to the world. And
Right.
one of the vehicles used was a cultural exhibition, which usually included a 600 volume library, uh, films and videos, and
Mhm.
actual exhibition items. The one you remember was probably Recreation USA, which was more aligned with recreation in America in all its forms, um, and demonstrating that to foreign audiences.
Right. And that was really a first of its kind, wasn't it?
Well, I don't remember an earlier one with that theme, um, and so that took us through 6 cities in the Soviet Union at the time, all the way to Siberia, to Armenia, to the Ural Mountains. Uh,
Do you think that time from the 50s into the 70s when that sort of PR, call it propaganda of American culture, was, being introduced to the world on that scale? This is before the internet. This is before, we were still looking at newsreels in the early days. Do you think that had an impact on the way the world operates today, and in terms of nutrition, in terms of education, everything you were talking about, um, for
well,
better or worse?
of course, it had to have had an impact through all the vehicles of communication, beginning with the radio, and the Voice
Mhm.
of America still is in existence, broadcasting 24 hours a day to most of the countries of the world in their own language. The programming, including many, many topics from politics to economics to cultural subjects, including nutrition and health and what have you. So it went from movies and radio
Mhm.
to video, and then to television and exhibitions, on the ground exhibitions, were one of the communications vehicles that was used to tell America's story to to the world. And this influenced young people at the time, and all peoples, to improve themselves and their society. So I think the programming through whatever vehicle, communications vehicle, has made a lasting impact.
Can you find a link between where we are now and what you were talking about, in the way that we educate one another and the way that we feed one another? Do you think that had potentially a negative outcome in some ways? Not to point any blame or fingers or anything like that, just sort of reflecting on where we've been and where we are now. The whole idea for this podcast is to gain new skills for this time. And I think that it's important to reflect on the past, how we got here, which your work was certainly significant in how the world, is today, and not just you, obviously, but the agency and many others. It's just a really interesting. It's been sitting on my mind a lot as I've been thinking about health and then thinking about nutrition, not only my own but my family and friends, and seeing around me the way that people are struggling so much with their health today. I don't know. It was a curiosity of mine, and I thought this would be a really interesting exploration with you.
Well, I think one of the benefits of that kind of cultural programming in the health
Mm-hmm.
and food area, particularly,
Mm-hmm.
resulted from advocating self development and self education. It's much The world is a much smaller place because of the communications revolution and the availability of information almost instantly on any subject and any topic, including health and food. So I think the development of technology was a very, very positive thing. And it's up to man to decide how he's going to use that technology and either learn from it or, unfortunately, not learn from it. So there's the upside that we're a healthier society. We eat healthier. We know more about food, nutrition, and health than our parents' generation did or our grandparents' generation did. And I think this is a great part of the ongoing American Revolution, which has been brought to the world through the development of technology.
Do you think that given where we are right now, and I definitely hear that perspective. I think it's really an important one to hear. But at the same time, I feel like we're struggling with things like obesity and diabetes that are unprecedented in human history, all over the world. Cultures that never had certain diseases related to nutrition, especially in the East, um, are now dealing with the same diseases of the West. And I'm looking around the world, and I'm looking in my own, circle and my own body, my own self. And I see a lot of disease. I see a lot of, um, difficult challenges with health and nutrition. I don't see necessarily through the same lens that the world is healthier than it ever was. I think it's actually the opposite in many ways. I think
Well,
we've
you can use as a
we've
parallel.
gone to
You can,
the other
you
extreme,
can use as
unfortunately.
you can use as a parallel uh, how people react or don't react to the advice on how to take care of themselves uh,
Hmm.
during this virus, um, coronavirus crisis. The
Yeah.
best minds um, on the subject advise people to wear masks. They've advised people to not congregate with other people. They've advised people how to um, clean and be healthy and avoid,
Hmm.
to a great extent, spreading this virus or getting the virus. Now, taking the use of masks as an example, you will go into any public area anywhere in the world and see a lot of people with masks and a lot of people without masks. Well,
Right.
the information is available. The human being has free will. And those people that choose not to wear masks are making a voluntary decision and, and
Right.
choice as to their own bodies and their relationship with their fellow human being. Similarly, in terms of diet and nutrition, the information
Mm-hmm.
is out there. The information is available. There are people who are adhering to what they've learned and what is being offered to them in terms of increased knowledge in the nutrition area, and other people who choose simply to go into McDonald's and to keep
Mm-hmm.
eating McDonald's every day and not following and dismissing the information that's out there as to why that type of a diet is unhelpful and the negative results that will occur. And so, in a room of 100 people, find those that have learned something and are applying that knowledge, and those that uh, heard that and learned that but decided not to apply, and then they have to pay the negative price, and society has to pay the negative price. This has occurred throughout the history of mankind, figuratively speaking, since the time of Adam and Eve. Uh, the
Yeah.
law is there. You decide you're either going to go through the stop sign or go through the red light or not. And if you do, you have to assume the risk of what is going to occur by your not uh, applying the knowledge that is available. So I don't see any difference between the characteristic of free choice today than it was to the human being 50,000 years ago who walked the face of the earth. If a medicine man or a shaman said, don't eat that kind of a mushroom because it's poisonous, I'm sure there are those that did not believe him and those did not agree and wanted to try it anyhow and wound up killing themselves. So I think man, having free will, has to decide what his own fate is going to be.
Yeah, right on the money. And I think that it leads me to my next question about the importance of spirituality and religious law during this time and during any time. I mean, we can look back. You're right. We can look back through history, pre prehistory, and we can see that cause and effect that you're talking about. Um, but you're correct that the world is much smaller now, right? In fact, some might argue that the world is flat again. Um, I can have a simultaneous conversation with you in Florida and someone in California and someone in Spain and someone in Brazil and someone in Africa in the same moment. Um, and that's changed things for humanity. And I think it also opens up to the question of that I explore in my artistic work, in my theater work, that dance between the human physical and the human spiritual. What do you see as the spiritual ramifications or importance of this time that we are in right now, given that you have lived the years that you have and have gleaned the information, have traveled the world, and you have more than most people I know, you have a comparative ability given your biography. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you ought to elucidate a little further on this point, because spirituality is a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking about man's position in the universe. All you have to do is take a photograph of the cosmos, a NASA photograph, and see the minuscule representation that the Earth makes in terms of the universe. And that's the same, uh, almost as if you are looking at yourself versus the rest of humanity. Uh, People look at themselves as king of the mountain, as the center of the universe, uh, when in reality, we are just a speck of dust in a vast um, cosmos. And I think one has to reflect upon what exactly is our position um, as human beings to the rest of creation. And it is in that sense, you develop a spirituality, um, knowing what your position really is. If you've ever been in the middle of an earthquake, for example, you realize the power of nature and the impotence of man. Uh, and
Well, we're seeing that right now with this
you're
virus,
only
aren't we?
able to do that after a personal experience. So,
Mhm.
the question of a spiritual identity is something that's within the human being, in the sense that knowing that all that surrounds you in the physical world could not have happened by accident. Um, and that we're like a part in an automobile. The automobile can't work as it was designed to work if it has no wheels. Similarly, the human being can't work the way the human being was designed without a spiritual connection with that power which created everything, including the human being. So I think spirituality is a very personal question, and it everybody has their own definition.
And what about religion, religious law, and doctrine?
Well, religious law and doctrine that I think it applies as well, in the sense that you have to, just as you have to adhere to the laws of nature, the laws of mathematics, the laws of physics. There are certain religious laws that have been put into the mixture, um, whether written by X or written by Y, but they are there, and there are certain spiritual truths, um, and one approaches those spiritual truths by adhering to a certain um, way of going about conducting your life. And that's what religion is. It's man's relationship to himself, and more importantly, man's relationship to the power that created the universe.
Yeah.
Why
So do
does
you
the
think
earth
that,
revolve around the sun and the sun not revolve around the earth? Uh, did it just
right?
happen that way? Um, I don't think so. Man has been looking, for example, for the missing link and has never found the missing link. There are those that believe that he never will find the missing link. And there are others that believe that one day one will discover that uh, beings from another solar system or another part of the universe seeded the earth. And that's where uh, mankind came from. Uh, it's a very personal question. That's why there's no right and
Hmm.
there's no wrong on the question of religious belief. Many people study Christianity, they study Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, and they find many, many similarities in these religions, and it is no accident. Uh, it is just
Hmm.
where a certain group of people found themselves in the universe, and it's kind of like a puzzle. We are a piece in a greater puzzle. Uh, One piece is
Hmm.
not more important than the other, and may be larger or may be smaller, but it's still part of the whole. And so it's up to each individual to decide what path they want to take to bring them closer to their creator and closer to their fellow human being.
Well, my question is, do you think that journey, that exploration, that reflection, especially now that we are so isolated from one another, um, not even able to go and have a Seder together in the same room or worship in a church. I mean, there are some places where you can, which is, there's an opinion about that. Um, but do you think that there's a special significance during this time, whether you are Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish or Christian or even atheist, with a belief in something, believing in nothing believes it's something. Um, do you think that there is a special significance to that journey and that conversation right now in history that may be different than the past, or do you think it's the same as it's always
Uh,
been,
I think
will always be?
basically the principle of loving thy neighbor as thyself is applicable as much today as it is was 5,000 years ago or earlier, because the human condition has not changed. The technology has changed. The amount of knowledge of the universe and knowledge about ourselves has changed, has evolved. But basically, from a social point of view and a relationship point of view, man's characteristics have not changed. I don't believe that somebody who sat around a table and made a decision as to how people should conduct themselves 300 years ago or 5,000 years ago had any greater uh, sense of man's position in the universe than we do today.
Is there anything in particular that you're reflecting on this Passover?
Well, I'm reflecting upon the passage of time and the separation from family. I think the family relationship is very, very important, and people's vanity gets in the way of achieving greater happiness. And so I'm reflecting upon the separation of family as being a negative thing and not a positive thing.
Yeah. I would venture to say that that holds true for the family of humankind as well. That's a microcosm of a much larger picture. And that's what I'm reflecting on right now. And it includes separation from family and, our personal family, our blood family, and our family of friends. but for me, it really extends to our global family. As you were saying, we're all, part of one thing, and I'm feeling a lot of division in the world still, in spite of this situation that we find ourselves in, that has the potential to bring people together. And in some ways, in some places, and some people is. But I'm still seeing a lot of division and a lot of hatred and a lot of us and them, and the vanity that you're talking about, I think is a big part of it.
Well, that's why I say
Do you feel
that technology may have advanced, our knowledge of certain things may have advanced, but the human characteristics have remained the same as they have been all along. So these negative uh, representations that were true in the past are still true today, and I think will always be true. We're always in the battle, uh, either as observers or participants in good versus evil. How you define evil, how you define good. That's why I'm going back to the biblical reference of loving thy neighbor as thyself. Because if mankind treated his fellow as he would want to be treated, it would be a much better, happier world. Not
it's such a simple concept, isn't it? It's such a simple concept that even a child can understand. Why is it that in the 21st century we haven't all tuned into that same frequency?
well, as the comedian used to say, the devil made me do it. Uh, the devil's been making uh, mankind do it since the beginning of man. And that's why when you look at certain books like the Bible, for example, uh, there are representations made which apply to the human being to this day. So it's not really a historical book; it's a handbook, a manual of how to conduct yourself and how to live a better life.
Well, but then there are also different interpretations of
Well,
that book. There are different
that's
translations.
where man comes into the picture and puts his finger in the
Right.
soup. You know, there's always
Well, there are
there's
whole
always
passages
there's always a
removed that we'll never
spoiler,
even know.
who thinks he or she knows better, and that is one of the
Right.
negative characteristics of humankind, and that will not change. It doesn't mean one doesn't strive to make positive change, but that is a characteristic that has been with us since the beginning, and I think will stick with us. That doesn't mean you stop trying.
Right. Do you think that the potential is there
No, it's always
someday
there.
that, yeah. I remember my grandmother, your mother, used to say that potential means nothing unless you're doing something with it.
Well, there's truth in that.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a really great interview, Dad. Thank you so much for taking the time on Passover. And I look forward to sharing a virtual Seder with you. And keep in touch, okay, about all of this. And if something occurs to you and you want to come back and expand on anything, I'll be here waiting.
Okay, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Give my grand dog Stanley a kiss and
I
tell him
sure
that I
will.
miss him and miss you and love you and thank you very much.
Love you. Chag
Chag
Sameach.
Sameach. Bye.
Your generous sponsorship and individual support of the Lost Traveler podcast benefits the Lost Travelers Club, a charitable project under the fiscal sponsorship of United Charitable, a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The Lost Travelers Club focuses primarily on the needs of parents who have outlived their beloved children. We recently launched our new Brain Candy Project wing, providing art supplies to children still struggling with critical or terminal health-related conditions. We hope to raise enough funds to launch Brain Candy, an arts and literature magazine created by and for these young people. Find out more at www.braincandy.online. Thank you. You've been listening to The Lost Traveler with Henry Cameron Allen. For more information, please visit www.henryallen.org. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let's all keep striving for a better world. Thank you.